Hi everyone. This is a third video to help with dialogue and flow quotes. This time though, you're going to be formatting the dialogue and the flow quotes. So, quick reminder of what we already talked about. We first talked about whether or not you pause. So, if you see a comma and a capital letter before the quote or to start the quote, that means that you do pause. If you do not see a comma and you don't see a capital letter, that means you don't pause because it all flows together. Next, you have to do those same rules, but you have to use those rules to decide, is it a dialogue quote or a flow quote? So if you have a comma and a capital letter to start the quote, we also have a dialogue tag like thinks or says or yells or cries. That tells us that there is a pause and that it's a dialogue quote. On the opposite side, if you don't have a comma and you don't have a capital letter, that means it all flows together, which means that you don't pause and it's a flow quote. Often NoRedInk will underline the word that to tip you off that it's a flow quote. So that brings us to topic 3. Topic 3, same rules as we've been doing this whole time, except this time you're going to have to click and format the sentence on NoRedInk. So you'll have to decide, do you have to add in capitalization? Do you have to add in a comma? So when you look at the practice, remember that when you click the bubble, you can always look at lessons to give you some tips if you're getting stuck. Let's do some practice ones together. As I scratched my head and looked for the trail mix, 11 admitted honestly, we fed it to the squirrels. Okay, so here I have to decide, do I need capitalization? Do I need a comma? Okay, so as I'm listening to the sentence, first of all, I see this word admitted, which is like a dialogue tag, right? It's like 11 said honestly, she admits honestly. So in this case, that dialogue tag tips me off that this is going to be a dialogue quote. Also, we can kind of hear a pause, right? 11 admitted honestly, we fed it to the squirrels. So that pause that we practice in unit 1 or in skill 1, we can kind of hear that here as well. So because I have a dialogue tag and I have a pause, that means that I need to add in a comma and I have to add in capitalization. So here's my comma, here's my capital letter. Let's see if that works. All right, let's do another one. Beyonce says I won't be able to put the comic book down because the artwork is out of control. All right, so again, these are a little bit tricky, right? We have to decide, is it a dialogue quote or is it a flow quote? Does it all flow together? So in this case, it's going to all flow together. So Beyonce says I won't be able to put the comic book down because the artwork is out of control. We don't hear a pause there. There's no place where it's not like Beyonce says the artwork is out of control, right? It's because the artwork is out of control, all one thought. So in this one, I don't have a pause. So I know it all flows together like a flow quote. So that means I don't need my comma and I don't need capital letters. The gym teacher believed that really tiny trampolines were built into Jimi Hendrix's sneakers. So in this one again, the word that can kind of tip us off. If we remember from skill 2, often when we see a that kind of is a little bit of a hint that it might be a flow quote. So another hint is that this quote, really tiny trampolines, is really short, right? That's not a full sentence. And because it's a really short, not full sentence, I know that it's also a flow quote. It's going to flow into the rest of the sentence. So that means that there's no pause. I don't need a comma. I don't need a capital letter. It all flows together. The gym teacher believed that really tiny trampolines were built into Jimi Hendrix's sneakers. The psychic said that a rocket scientist who always wears a pink beanie will be Jack White's math teacher next month. So same thing applies. The that can kind of tip us off that it's a flow quote. also the fact that this sentence is so short, right? That's not a sorry, that clause is so short. It's not a full sentence. A rocket scientist who always wears a pink beanie will be Jack White's math teacher. So because it all flows together, we have our that, we have kind of a short quote in the middle of the rest of our sentence. So that means that we don't need our comma and we have to change our capital letter. Here's another one that is going to be a dialogue quote. So at the debate, Nicki Minaj asserted dogs are better than cats. So the word that really tips me off here is asserted. This is just like she said, right? Or she reflected, or she observed, or she yelled. That word tips me off that it's going to be dialogue. So that means that we would have a comma and we would have a capital letter. It doesn't all flow together. So just a quick recap here. The rules are the same as what we've been doing, but this time you edit it to include the comma and the capitalization if it is a dialogue quote, and to take out the comma or capitalization if it's a flow quote. So a few hints that we saw in the tutorial: if the quote is introduced by a dialogue word like said or thought or reflected or shouted or cried or exclaimed or cursed, any of those dialogue tags tell you that it's going to be a dialogue quote. So that means yes, you need a comma, and yes, you need to start the quote with a capital letter. If there is no dialogue tag, if there is no word like he said, she said, they said, then that gives you a hint that it might be a flow quote. Sometimes the word that can also be a tip. So he said that he was the best. Another tip is that oftentimes the quote will be a shorter clause or phrase. So maybe not a full independent clause, like a full sentence. It might be a shorter phrase that blends into the rest of the sentence. So that's something else to look for. If it's a flow quote, that means no comma and no capital letter. Okay. This one's definitely a little bit tricky. So take your time. If you get stuck, look back at the tutorial, or set up time to work through some of them with your teacher. Be patient. This skill's a little bit tricky, but it's so important for your own writing to be able to correctly format a dialogue quote and a flow quote. Okay, so good luck. Make sure you reach out when questions come up. Thanks, everyone.